When cleaning pens where the nib and feed are friction fit, is it best practice to pull out the nib and feed or to leave it in? I'm pretty new to fountain pens, and I've found it easier to clean by fully disassembling the pen. But I've read some posts where it says that this can damage the fit of the nib and the feed if the pen it is done too much. Thanks for the help. You're very welcome. So I grabbed a pen so that I can show you kind of what you're talking about. I know exactly what you're talking about because I do this all the time. So basically you have a pen. I have a TWSBI Eco here. It is a pen. I use it. I love it. I want to switch out different inks. Great. I want to clean it out very thoroughly, right? So I'm going to pull my nib and my feed out and then clean it all out, and then I'm going to put it back, and then I'm going to rock on and use my next ink. But 3 days later, I'm going to pull it out. I'm going to do it again. 3 days later, I'm going to do it out, put it again, on and on and on, right? So am I damaging my pen longer term by doing that? So the short answer is yes, with quotations. You're technically causing more wear and tear on your pen when you fully disassemble it like that than you are if you don't. Now, when you fully disassemble it like that, you're also cleaning it more thoroughly than you are if you don't disassemble it. So is it better to more fully clean and disassemble it than it is to leave it in place and maybe not fully clean and disassemble it? So the short answer is it's completely up for debate. I have not yet, granted I have not been around for an infinite number of years, but I have not yet in my recent memory had anyone that's come back to me and let me know about damage that they've caused through wear and tear of disassembling their pens. I have had people come back and say, I disassembled my pen and I dropped my nib down the sink drain, or I accidentally, broke something, or my cat got my feed, or something like that. That I have heard about. So I don't know that it's necessarily so much of a wear and tear issue as it is like a risk exposure issue while you have your pen disassembled. Does that make sense? So I think there's a greater risk of you dropping a piece or losing a component or something like that while you're disassembling your pen than it is purely just by the physical wear and tear that's caused by you cleaning and removing the pen constantly. I think there's probably just as equal much risk, does that even make sense? I don't know. Don't dissect my grammar, please. There's probably just as much of an equal chance, I just said it differently, that sounded a little more natural, of you causing damage by not cleaning the pen as well and having like dried up ink cake around your pen, and then you go to take it apart and you like are really having to tug and pull and all that kind of stuff. It's probably just as much of a risk doing that. So I don't have any hard, fast data to tell you that one is better than the other. I think it's going to be a matter of personal preference. I think that most pen companies, when they tell you how to clean and maintain your pens, they're going to not tell you to fully disassemble your pen because, and I know this from having been in the customer service business for the last 8 years, not everybody knows how to put it back together properly. Not everybody knows how to take it apart properly. And I think the warranty-related risk of telling everybody in the world who buys a certain pen that they should fully disassemble it every time they clean their pen would create more problems than it would solve. But you as an individual can use your own judgment to say, do I know how to take this pen apart? Am I going to cause any damage to it by doing it? If you know how to take your pen apart well and you can do it without causing any damage to the pen, I say go nuts. And just be aware that if you get into a warranty issue and you say, oh yeah, I was ripping the pen and feed apart and all that kind of stuff, and the feed broke in half, the manufacturer might be like, well, we're not really crazy about you doing that, so we're going to charge you a repair fee. Okay, fine. You may just have to kind of accept that if that's the case, because you are kind of taking the pen apart somewhat further maybe than they may have determined that it should have been done. So you're kind of in a gray area there, and that's just something that you do as a pen enthusiast to know that you're doing that. Just like if you buy a new car and they tell you you have to take it to the dealer and get it repaired and use only dealer authorized parts to maintain your full warranty. Well, you may be perfectly capable of replacing your alternator or charging up your air conditioning system. But if you do it and something goes wrong, even if it's not your fault, they might point to it and go, well, you didn't get it serviced by an authorized whatever, at an authorized place. Okay, you're right, technically. And you just kind of accept that. So you may be fully capable of taking it apart, do it at your own risk. And I personally, just through my own experience, I will take my pens apart somewhat more often than I will not, with the exception of a couple of times. If I'm gonna clean it out and re-ink it with a very similar ink or an identical ink, I'll give it a quick cleaning just to get the parts smooth and flowing, but I don't need to do a thorough cleaning, so I'll not fully disassemble a pen. You know, a good example is like my Visconti Homo sapiens. I use that on a pretty regular basis, and that pen is a pain to fully clean out. So I will just take, and it's a vacuum filler, and yeah, technically I can pull the nib. I haven't yet pulled the nib actually out of the housing on this pen, but I have unscrewed the housing out of it, and I'll clean around there a little bit if I'm changing colors and something like that. It can be a total pain to clean out very thoroughly, so I try not to change the color of the ink that drastically in this pen, just because it's not that fun to clean out. A pen like the Eco Clear Demonstrator, it's also kind of a pain, so I'll try to stick to a similar color in it if I can. If it's a cartridge converter pen, yeah, I'll just go nuts on that thing, flush it out with a bulb syringe, pretty easy. If I can pull the nib and feed out on it, fine, but a pen like a Lamy, a Safari, All-Star, something like that, yes, technically you can pull the nib and feed out of it, but honestly it's kind of a pain. So unless I leave the ink sitting in there for a really long time and it's like crusted up and dried up and I have to really thoroughly clean it, I won't completely disassemble it. And you have to be careful there when it gets all crusty and dried up, then you get in a situation where it can dry up and actually adhere, so like somewhat adhere and give you some resistance on the nib and the feed, and that's when you can actually cause some damage through trying to sheer force of will, trying to rip the thing apart. I have definitely damaged some feeds. I've damaged some TWSBI feeds because their feeds, the fins on their feeds can be somewhat delicate sometimes. And if it's a real crusty situation and you go to rip that thing out of there, you can cause some problems. I've also, when I've taken pens apart before, sometimes you get this little post on the back of the feed. I've had it where I've gone to pull the pen apart and I've pulled up too much like this and I've snapped that little post right off the back of the feed. It doesn't render the pen useless, but it's not exactly great for the pen necessarily, because otherwise what the heck is the point of having that thing there in the first place? It's just not super ideal. So I've definitely damaged some stuff by taking it apart before. You have to kind of take that with your own knowledge and risk and acceptance of that. But I think that the vast majority of the time, yeah, I'm dealing with people who are more not cleaning their pens enough and causing harm to their pens than they are by cleaning them too much and too well. So I would say the vast majority of you who are listening to this, I think you probably would be well served by almost intentionally trying to clean your pens too well than you would by not cleaning it well enough.